In 1240, a message left Karakorum, the Mongol capital, at dawn. It needed to reach a general stationed 6,000 miles away, near the Danube River, in what is now Hungary. European kings of that era took weeks, sometimes months, to send word across a single kingdom. The Mongols delivered that same message in under 2 weeks. This is not legend. This is engineering. We talk endlessly about Mongol cavalry, about their speed in battle, about the sheer terror they brought to the gates of Vienna and Beijing alike. But nobody asks the real question. How did Genghis Khan's successors coordinate a war machine sprawling across the largest contiguous land empire in human history? Without satellites, without electricity, without paper maps in most of their conquered territories. The answer is buried in a system so elegant, so brutal, and so precise that modern logistics engineers still study it. If that sounds like the kind of secret history nobody taught you in school, subscribe, hit the bell, and leave a comment below. What empire should we expose next? Because what you're about to discover will permanently change how you see the word empire. Picture this. You have just conquered the known world, from the frozen steppes of Siberia to the sun-scorched plains of Persia, from the Pacific coast of China to the doorstep of Western Europe. All of it, yours. But here is where the nightmare begins. An empire is not won by conquest alone. It is held by information. And information, in the 13th century, moved at the speed of a horse, if you were lucky. The Mongol Empire, at its peak, covered over 24 million square kilometers. To put that in perspective, riding a horse at full gallop, non-stop, it would take you over a year just to cross it. But there was a problem far worse than distance. The empire was fragmented into 4 massive divisions, called khanates, each governed by a different branch of Genghis Khan's descendants. The Great Khan in Karakorum needed to know, at all times, what each of those branches was doing. Tax revenues collected, armies repositioned, rebellions suppressed, trade routes opened or threatened. Without reliable, fast communication, those khanates would drift. They would make independent decisions. They would stop being one empire and become 4 rival kingdoms. That is exactly what happened to Alexander the Great's empire. The moment he died, his generals split everything apart within a generation. The Mongols knew this, and they built something to stop it from happening to them. Something so precise, so ruthlessly efficient, that it had no real parallel anywhere on Earth at that time. They called it the Yam, not a war machine, not a weapon. A postal relay network, stretching across the entire Mongol Empire like a circulatory system running through a living body. Few people know this, but the Yam was arguably the single most sophisticated communication infrastructure the ancient world had ever produced. Here is how it worked at its core. Every 25 to 40 kilometers along every major imperial road, the Mongols constructed a station. They called these stations Urtu, rest points, relay nodes, the beating pulse of the empire. Each station was fully stocked. Fresh horses, anywhere from 10 to 400 depending on the route's strategic importance. Food, water, shelter, and armed guards. Everything a rider needed to drop one exhausted horse, mount a fresh one, and keep moving without losing a single minute. The real innovation wasn't in warfare, it was in the handoff. Riders carried a physical token, a tablet of authority called a paisa, made from gold, silver, or iron depending on the urgency and rank of the message. Flash that tablet at any station, and every resource there became yours instantly. No negotiation, no delay. This is where the story gets interesting. The Yam wasn't just for messages. Goods, diplomats, spies, and imperial decrees all moved through the same arteries. The system connected the Pacific to the Mediterranean. One network, one protocol. zero tolerance for failure. But building it required something most empires never had: the willingness to be absolutely merciless about maintaining it. The Yam did not run on ambition, it ran on obligation. Every conquered territory absorbed into the Mongol Empire was assigned a specific quota. Villages along relay routes were required to supply horses, food, and manpower to their nearest station, permanently. Not as a one-time tribute, as an ongoing tax, paid in labor and livestock. This is where the economics get brutal. Historians estimate that at its operational peak, the Yam network maintained over 50,000 horses stationed across its relay points simultaneously. Those animals needed feeding, veterinary care, and constant rotation. The logistical cost fell almost entirely on local populations. Farmers, herders, conquered peoples who had no choice but to keep the system breathing. The riders themselves were a specialized class. Selected young, trained for endurance rather than combat. They were known as Elchi, imperial messengers. Their job was singular: deliver the message. Nothing else existed. Few people know this. Elite riders wore tight bandages around their torsos to absorb the physical punishment of riding at full gallop for hours without rest. They carried bells attached to their saddles, audible warnings so station handlers could hear them coming and have a fresh horse already waiting before the rider even dismounted. The handoff took under 60 seconds. At maximum operational speed, a relay message could cover 300 kilometers in a single day. In mountainous terrain, it rarely dropped below 200. For comparison, the Roman cursus publicus, the most advanced postal system in the Western world at its peak, averaged roughly 75 kilometers per day. The Mongols were not faster because of magic. They were faster because they had engineered every single second of friction out of the process. No system built by human hand survives contact with reality unchanged. The Yam was extraordinary, but it had fracture points, and when those fracture points gave way, the consequences rippled across the entire empire with terrifying speed. The first vulnerability was corruption. Station masters, local officials responsible for maintaining relay points, discovered quickly that their position gave them enormous unofficial power. Horses could be diverted, supplies skimmed, Pisa tablets forged or sold to merchants who had no imperial authorization to use the network. But there was a problem far deeper than individual greed. The Yam was being abused by the Mongol elite themselves. Nobles, generals, and regional governors began using relay stations as personal courier services, moving private goods, personal letters, even luxury merchandise across the network at imperial expense. By the mid-13th century, the system was carrying 10 times the traffic it was originally engineered to handle. The horses began breaking down faster than conquered villages could replace them. What happened next was surprising. The great Khan Munka, Genghis Khan's grandson, launched one of the ancient world's first recorded audits of a communication infrastructure. Inspectors were dispatched across every major relay corridor with authority to dismiss, punish, or execute station masters found guilty of mismanagement. It bought the system another generation of operational efficiency, but it revealed something more unsettling beneath the surface. The Yam's greatest enemy was not enemy sabotage. It was the Empire's own appetite for the power the network provided. Every faction that gained access to the Yam gained political leverage. Control the information flow, and you controlled what the Great Khan knew when he knew it, and crucially, what he never found out at all. The Mongol Empire collapsed, but the Yam never truly died. When the four Khanates fragmented in the late 13th and early 14th centuries, the physical infrastructure of the relay network remained embedded in the landscape. Roads still connected the stations. Wells still marked the corridors. Local populations still knew the routes. What happened next reshaped global history in ways that textbooks almost never credit to a postal system. The Yam created the first reliable transcontinental trade corridor the world had ever seen. Merchants, most famously documented by Marco Polo, used the same relay infrastructure to move goods, ideas, and technologies between China, Persia, and Europe at speeds previously considered impossible. This is where the story gets profound. The period historians call the Pax Mongolica, the Mongol Peace, was not primarily a military achievement. It was a logistical one. Safe passage across 6,000 miles of territory was only possible because the Yam had already stitched those miles together into a functioning network. Plague traveled those same corridors. The Black Death, which killed between 30 and 60% of Europe's population, moved along Yam-connected trade routes with the same efficiency as imperial decrees. The secret was hidden in something seemingly ordinary: a relay station, a fresh horse, a 60-second handoff on a windswept steppe. 3 centuries later, when the Russian Empire expanded eastward across Siberia, their administrators studied surviving Yam infrastructure and modeled their own postal network directly upon it. The Pony Express, launched in the American West in 1860, used relay stations spaced almost identically to Mongol Ertu, with fresh horses and timed handoffs engineered to maximize daily distance covered. Its designers had never met a Mongol, but they had independently rediscovered the same solution to the same problem. Today, server relay networks, the architecture that moves your emails, streams your video, and processes your payments across global infrastructure, operate on a mathematically identical principle: distributed nodes, optimized handoffs, zero tolerance for bottlenecks. The Great Khan's engineers would recognize it instantly. Empires are not built by the sharpest sword. They are built by the most reliable system. The Mongols did not hold 24 million square kilometers together through fear alone. They held it together through information, moving faster than any enemy could react. The Yam was never taught in your history class, but its logic is running right now, invisibly, inside every network you touch. That is the real lesson of the Mongol Empire. Not conquest, not cavalry, a relay station on a frozen steppe, and the ruthless engineering discipline to keep it alive. If this changed how you see history, drop a comment below. Share this with someone who thinks empires were built by warriors. And subscribe, because next time, we go even deeper into the invisible systems that built the ancient world. The story isn't over. It never was.